I first really realized it when I was about 8 years old. I just, like I said, I noticed I wasn't happy and not just like a somewhat sad feeling, but a serious down, prolonged down feeling. And I just knew that this wasn't normal. And with knowing that my dad has depression and knowing full well I could possibly have it too, I told my dad, I think I got your depression.
For myself, I had a lot of depression in my days, and some of it was stress related, school related. But at first it really manifested as anxiety, which I think Zach has also manifested as, and ultimately, depression. You're lonely, you're not happy with things, and you just realize you're not enjoying things like you should, and you're taking things personally. You're very edgy, and you don't trust people, and you just start realizing that's not necessarily how you should be feeling.
Depression is America's most common mental illness in teenagers and adults. Roughly 20 million suffer from depression every year. That's around 7% of our population alone. 1 in 4 people have either experienced or suffered with depression, and 15 to 20% of teens will experience depression before adulthood.
The main thing I see when students come to report that they feel depressed is a general feeling of sadness and often a loss of interest, whether it be in school activities, hanging out with friends, even doing their schoolwork. They report they don't feel like they want to get up in the morning, they want to lay in bed all day. Those are the general things that I hear kids tell me when they say that they feel depressed.
I mean, the most common feelings or emotions that come with it would be like hopelessness and helplessness and this extreme loss of control. So, uh, it's like an impending darkness that it's really difficult to escape. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen those antidepressant commercials. There's this one, I'm not sure which one it was for, but the woman has a black robe and she's clinging to her and she's trying to tear it off and she can't tear it off, and no matter how hard she tries, this robe just clings to her, this darkness. And I think that's a lot of what comes with depression, is that no matter how hard you try to escape, no matter how much people want to think that it's just a decision we make, it's not necessarily. It's something that clings to you.
When it comes to being diagnosed with depression, there are certain criteria you have to make.
To be called a psychiatric disorder in the Manual of Mental Health, it's called the DSM. In order for a disorder to be named and to be in there, it has to have a certain number of cases per the population. It actually has to be very rare in order to be classified as a disorder, because those feelings are so normal. So in order for it to be classified through a mental health personnel that you have depression, that is actually, it means that compared to the rest of the population, you actually have really severe symptoms.
About half of people diagnosed with depression are also diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. Anxiety is basically a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about a certain event or problem?
It was the day before I graduated 8th grade. We had this whole ceremony for 8th grade graduation. The night before, my parents have been divorced ever since I was a little kid, since before I've had depression, but that's beside the point. They had just started a court battle over my custody because my dad wanted to spend more time with me and I wanted to spend more time with my dad. And my mom that day, she had just confronted me about it, and I don't know why. Just as I tried to go to sleep, I just broke out into hysterics. I just couldn't sleep straight or think straight. I couldn't sleep. I felt like I was losing my mind. I was bawling my eyes out. I actually had to go into the living room and call my dad because I didn't know what was going on or what to do or what was happening. I couldn't do anything. I felt like I was going to die, and I wanted to die right there.
So depression and anxiety are kind of similar in that they start as kind of negative thoughts or irrational thoughts within a person. Kind of starts with the person's cognitions. Eventually, it can progress into a disorder where there's a chemical imbalance and you would require medical intervention. Most of the time, if it's a mild case, you can start with cognitive behavioral therapy where you're challenging a person's cognitions about themselves. And then that can kind of lead to successful therapy and not always require medical intervention.
If you or a loved one are feeling depressed, follow these tips. 1. Talk to a friend.
Him, when your best friend comes to you about depression, there's not much you can say other than, all right, how do I help? Zach comes to me with everything, and I try to help him as much as I can, but there's some things that you can't help him with. But supporting him, when he's come to me with a panic attack or anxiety, I just remember I bring up the bright sides other than the bad sides. It seems to help him. So I just support him by being a good friend, I guess.
2. Talk to your parents.
You have to want to help yourself. And I think one of the things I always say to Zach and even my daughter is, when I think they're having problems, and you just try to help them, there's no good answer. At least to them, there's no good answer. And I use the example of these glasses. Like if you ever put on these rose-colored sunglasses, everything's rosy. You see the pink color. But if you're depressed, you have these depressed sunglasses on, and everything you see has a depressive thing. There's no answer because you're seeing it as a depressed person, and you realize you have to see it with somebody else's help, maybe who's not depressed, how to get out of that, or be willing to even though you think it's not the right answer, to try and take the advice of people and see if it works.
3. Talk to your guidance counselor.
There's, there's being able to distract yourself, being able to just force yourself to do simple tasks one at a time. So wake up, okay, get out of bed. That's the next thing. Don't think about anything but the next thing that you have to do. And these kinds of coping mechanisms help. But, I would say utilizing therapy as a tool from a professional is a huge help, and especially in learning those coping mechanisms. The thing that I would say is that learning these coping mechanisms, while helpful, it takes time to actually implement them.
Have anxiety or depression or just these long periods of stress, loneliness, sadness, I would say anything that you can do to help somebody else. It might be the smallest thing helping, where you go over to a neighbor's house, an elderly neighbor, and help them unpack their groceries or carry something or help them move something, or you go to a soup kitchen, you volunteer your time, or you help watch a younger sibling. Just anything that you do to help others always helps yourself.
Depression is something you can get through.
But it really does get better if you just hang in there and if you get the help you need and talk it out with friends, family, or sometimes even by yourself. I've done that a couple times, and I immediately feel better. If I'm ever feeling anxious, I just talk and just let it out, and it helps me out a lot. No matter where you think you are with your depression, you just need to find that one thing that helps you out, and immediately your whole world just brightens up.
If you or a loved one are feeling depressed, go to teenline.org or call 800-984-2933.